were interviewed in it, expelled. What did you think about that? And if you ever saw the movie in its entirety?
Yes, I have seen it. I actually saw it in Minneapolis, and it was rather a funny episode, which I perhaps won't go into.
Oh no! Wait a minute. You have to go into that.
Okay.
What happened?
I was taken by P.Z. Myers, who runs a very famous blog from Minnesota, and he obtained tickets to go on the internet like everybody else, and we were queuing up, and he and I and his family and a number of other people, and an usher came and recognized P.Z. Myers and threw him out, even though he was in the film and credited with grateful thanks in the film for being interviewed.
But
I also was credited, but they didn't recognize me. So I got in, and at the end, the producer, a deeply dishonest man, was standing up and taking questions, and I stood up and challenged him, why did you throw out Dr. Myers, who, after all, you thanked in the film? And it was a bit of a scene. I mean, it was. But let me get to the film itself. A deeply disreputable piece of work. P.Z. Myers and I and Eugenie Scott and various others were deceived into taking part by being told that the film was very different from what it actually was. We were never told that it was a creationist front. I never actually heard of Ben Stein before, but I met this man, and he started asking me questions. I actually told him pretty much what I've just told you about the possibility of there being highly intelligent aliens. And that the context in which I did that was that he said to me, can you conceive of any circumstances in which you could expect that life on this planet could have been intelligently designed? And I said, the only circumstances I can think of, bending over backwards to try to put the best light I possibly could on the theory of intelligent design, would be if life on this planet had been designed by a superior scientific intelligence on another planet. I didn't say I believed in that, but I said that's the only kind of intelligent design that I thought even had a prayer of a chance of being right. This was distorted in the film to say Dawkins believes in little green men and believes that little green men created life on Earth. And that's the kind of typical dishonest trick that film perpetrated.
And so when you stood up in the audience, was the producer shocked to see you there?
I can't read his mind, but I presume he was, yes.
To the phones to Kent in Mankato. Hi, Kent. Thanks for waiting.
Hey, quick comment and then few quick questions here. I find myself that I'm potentially evolving into a deist because I believe it's possible to manipulate and package the data that goes into a religion. And then my question, I'll go through these quick and then take the answers off the air. How do you explain what was there before the Big Bang? That's the theory I'm familiar with. That's one. The next one is I have an in-law that had a near-death experience, and he can, when he was clinically dead, he can tell us who was there, what was going on. I don't know how that gets explained. And then the third question is, do you believe religion allows for the control of the masses?
Yes to the third question. Get that out of the way first of all. The first question, what came before the Big Bang? Nobody knows. I'm not a physicist. Physicists are better qualified than I am to answer it. Physicists will often say there's no such, that the question doesn't even mean anything, that time itself began in the Big Bang. Now, I don't understand what that means. Physicists will say that time itself, that is, it's a bit like saying, Stephen Hawking's used the analogy, it's a bit like saying what's north of the North Pole. It doesn't mean anything. You can go on going north, and when you hit the North Pole, you can't go any further north than that. There are physicists who will say that you can't even ask the question, what came before the Big Bang. What I would say, which seems to me to be common sense and logic, is that whatever came before the Big Bang, or whatever caused the Big Bang to happen, or however the Big Bang happened, is a big mystery. It's one that physicists are working on constructively, and whatever else you may say about it, it's not going to be helped by postulating a divine intelligence. Because if you postulate a divine intelligence, then you've still got the problem of explaining where that came from. So you're not going to get anywhere by that means. You better follow another avenue, which is what physicists are following, and I'm afraid I can't follow them because I don't have the right kind of brain.
Are you, I don't know how old you are.
67.
Would you mind telling me? Are you, even in your most private, personal moments, absolutely convinced that when, the day arrives and you're facing mortality, that your convictions will be as strong on that day as they are today, that there is no God? Do you leave any space for the possibility that you're wrong, and on the day you die, you find out that you're wrong?
Well, I can't prognosticate how I will feel. I mean, maybe I'll be senile and gaga, and I may, be converted to religion for those reasons. I certainly hope not, and I certainly intend to have a tape recorder switched on so that nobody can falsely allege that I had a deathbed conversion.
Uh-huh.
Now, as to the question of, I've already said I'm not convinced of anything. I can't say categorically.
Well, you're 6.5.
I'm 6.5
on the scale. Convinced.
I can't say categorically that there is no life after death. It seems to me to be very implausible, because everything that we understand about the way minds work suggests that they're bound up with brains, and brains don't survive death. Everything that we know suggests that brains evolved gradually over millions of years, hundreds of millions of years, getting more and more complex. And so worms have brains, but probably not consciousness. As evolution progressed, you have animals that probably have a sort of rudimentary consciousness. Maybe shrews and mice have a sort of rudimentary consciousness. This all evolved by gradual degrees over hundreds of millions of years in brains as brains got bigger and bigger. Now, that doesn't seem to me to ring plausible, to say when your brain dies, your consciousness goes on. Where was it in all those evolutionary eons in the past? It just doesn't ring plausible.
I hear your argument on that, and I understand your argument. I guess what I'm asking is, are you 6.5 on the scale, believing that you will be as convinced or almost as convinced as you are today in the moment when it's all going to end and you face whatever it is that comes after, if it's nothing or if it's something?
I've already said that I might be gaga. If I were condemned to death today, in my present mental faculties, 6.5, just about probably more than 6.5, 6.9.
To the phones to Jason in Monticello. Jason, can you make it quick?
Yeah. Could you please talk about the irreducible complexity argument for designer of the universe?
All right.
The irreducible complexity argument, the phrase was coined about 10 years ago. The argument itself goes back a long, long way. It goes back to before Darwin, as a matter of fact. Darwin answered it. If there really was an irreducibly complex thing, then you want to ask two questions. Irreducibly complex means that if you take away one bit of it, the whole thing collapses like a house of cards, and it won't work. So the argument is that if you find and it's been said that, for example, eyes are irreducibly complex, or the bacterial flagellum is irreducibly complex. One meaning of that is that if you take away one brick from the entire edifice, the whole thing collapses, and so it couldn't have evolved by gradual degrees. Now that is false, because you can have scaffolding that is there to build the thing up. And once it's built up, you can take the scaffolding away. And so then it becomes irreducibly complex in the sense that if you remove one brick, it all collapses. But it doesn't mean that it couldn't have evolved gradually. That's the first point. The second point is that some of the alleged irreducibly complex things, such as the bacterial flagellum, it's just simply the man who suggested it didn't know enough. And modern work has shown that actually there are antecedents to the bacterial flagellum. But the third point is that is that he simply argues by assertion. Simply he asserts that something is irreducibly complex. You can't just assert something like that without qualification, without evidence, without substantiation. Yet that's what he does. Ever since Darwin, we've been fighting off claims that this is irreducibly complex or that is irreducibly complex. And it turns out that the claims are made by people who are just ignorant.
We haven't talked about Darwin as much as I wanted to, and we're almost out of time, so we'll do that then when your next book comes out. But I do want to ask you about that in the moments that we have left. The new book is going to be called The Greatest Show on Earth, The Evidence for Evolution. Why do we need a book like that? I mean, there's
why do we need it?
Well, there's a lot of scientific theory out there, especially in this year that we're celebrating the publication of the anniversary here of Darwin's on origins.
40% of the American public believes that the world is only 6,000 years old.
Are they going to be persuaded by your book?
Who knows?
I mean, haven't you given up on those people?